Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, I'm bringing you guys Week 8 tight end rankings for fantasy football in 2020. Inside of this video, we are going to be discussing my top 20 tight ends for this week and discuss why I have them ranked at the given spot from 1 through 20 for week number 8 of the 2020 fantasy football season. So before we get into it, I'd like to ask that if at any point inside of this video that you guys end up enjoying, to please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, because not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win that 2020 fantasy football championship. And real quick, I'd like to give you guys a quick word from my friends and my sponsor over at Drafters.com. Drafters.com offers a variety of sports as well as games for fantasy football. You can play in the Rankem, you can play in the snake drafts, and pretty much the thing that I play most in is the snake drafts. It's pretty much just a regular fantasy football draft that you had at the beginning of the season, except for it is a weekly draft. You draft for 1 week, you see head-to-head up against a couple of people that you're playing against, who scores more fantasy football points, and then you win the cash at the end of the week. There's a variety of entry fees. Some of these are just $1, others go up to $100+, so it's really what you want to make of it, how much money you want to spend on a weekly basis. And if you use code Notorious at checkout, you get a 50% deposit bonus up to $100 with a 10 times rollover on the bonus to withdraw. So make sure you guys go on there, get that free money, play and win. It is super simple. Make sure you guys check it out, drafters.com. When you go to deposit, use code Notorious at checkout. And we are back. Please make sure to check out Drafters. Let's get into it. Week 8 tight end rankings for fantasy football in 2020. Coming in here at number 1 through 10 is the first part. 11 through 20 is the second part. So at number 1, we got Travis Kelce going up against the New York Football Jets. There's nothing better than playing up against the New York Football Jets. But the only worry is that Travis Kelce and the Kansas City Chiefs shit stomp the Jets early. They absolutely railroad them. And then they take Pat Mahomes out, and then they really start to run the ball, and then they're not throwing the ball as much. That's really the only concern, is if Travis Kelce doesn't get a decent amount of points in the first half of the game. That's kind of my concern with every Kansas City Chief player, is that if they don't get it done early, it may be hard to finish as the number 1 guy at the position on the given week. But I'll go ahead and take my shot here on Travis Kelce, potentially scoring 2 touchdowns in the first 7 seconds of the game because of how shit the New York Football Jets are and of how complete a team the Kansas City Chiefs are. Number 2, we have George Kittle-Me-Timbers going up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. Without Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle are the mainstay targets at the tight end and wide receiver position for this week, which opens up a lot of targets for George Kittle with Deebo Samuel not playing. George Kittle hasn't been all that amazing thus far this season, but the potential for him this week is immense going up against the Seattle Seahawks, a team that is not or doesn't have the greatest defense, but will be able to claw its way back in the game, so that they're going to have to be fighting back and forth here with the 49ers and Seattle. Seattle's defense is not very good at all this far this season. That's why Russell Wilson has had to throw the ball so much thus far this year. At number 3, we have Darren Waller going up against the Cleveland Browns at home in Cleveland, or not at home for fucking the Raiders, but in Cleveland. I like Darren Waller in this matchup. Darren Waller is probably the most underestimated tight end in the NFL, or undervalued. He has a big value to the team, but he is personally undervalued by the media, by whoever the fuck's talking about him. Darren Waller here up against the Cleveland Browns. I think this one's going to be a very close matchup here, the Raiders versus the Cleveland Browns. So I think that Darren Waller will be able to put up a solid affair here, as long as this game keeps it close. Next up at number 4, we have Mark Andrews going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. This does seem like a kind of scary matchup for Mark Andrews. That's why he's not a top 3 guy this week. I like the other matchups up against the Jets, Seattle, and Cleveland more than I do for Mark Andrews up against the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. And my biggest worry is that Lamar Jackson gets down early and just doesn't perform later in the game. Kind of like what we saw happen to him up against the Chiefs, and kind of like what we've seen happen to him his whole career. He just cannot come from behind. He can only come in missionary position. So I like Mark Andrews here in this game. I think he will be involved, but I do worry about them getting gobsmacked and him not performing as well as I think. At number 5, we have TJ Hockenson going up against the Indianapolis Colts. TJ Hockenson has been so reliable thus far this season, a real safety net that you can just cast right into your roster on a weekly basis, which is the complete opposite of what we saw Hockenson as last season. With that said, up against the Indianapolis Colts is a tougher matchup, but Matthew Stafford has been sprinkling the ball his way a lot this season, so I like TJ Hockenson in this one. At number 6, we have Jonnu Smith going up against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. This is another case of a back and forth affair that I really like. A lot of players in this game, and Jonnu Smith is no exception for the Tennessee Titans going up against the Bengals. I understand Jonnu didn't play all that hot last week, but that's because he was coming off of an injury and didn't really get as many opportunities, didn't play as many snaps. But this week, I expect a full workload and a full load to be blasted onto the Cincinnati Bengals from the hands of Jonnu Smith. And number 7, we have Robert Gronkowski going up against the New York Football Giants. Reports now are that all games are good to go for this week. So Rob Gronkowski and friends will be playing up against the New York Football Giants this week on Monday, even though a couple of Giants players got the big Rona. So I expect Rob Gronkowski to be involved again without Chris Godwin. Before Antonio Brown gets here, we're in for a big game for Gronk, especially since Mike Evans has been very touchdown dependent recently, and Gronk has been rising on the up and up and getting a lot more points, getting a lot more snaps, getting a lot more usage in the pass catching game as the weeks have gone on, and Gronk's been on fire the last 2 games, so I like him here again up against a not so hot Giants defense. This may be our final Gronk spike, our final Gronk shebang before AB gets there. It gets a shit ton of targets next week. And number 8, we have Hunter Henry going up against the Denver Broncos in Denver. I think Hunter Henry's in for a solid one this week. The Denver Broncos defense looks like fucking deflated like a football in Indianapolis when the Patriots come to town. So I think Hunter Henry will be good in this one. Again, the tight end position is so top heavy. Aside from these guys, all that are in the top 10, I don't really feel ultra confident starting a lot of these guys that are like tight end 13, 14, 15. We'll get to them a little bit later, but Hunter Henry is one of those guys that has so much talent, has so much potential. The fucking biggest guy on the field, looks like he will eat the defense for breakfast and just doesn't always do it, even when Herbert's slinging the rack all over the yard. So that is a worry for me, but I like Henry here at number 8. The guy behind him, I almost like more, but I feel like there's a lot more upside for Henry here, especially with Davante Adams probably eating the Minnesota Vikings for breakfast. At number 9, we have Robert Tonyan going up against the Minnesota Vikings. That Vikings defense sucks some fat fucking hog, and Robert Tonyan's in here for a big matchup, just like all these other guys ahead of him are. I like Tonyan this week. I think the Minnesota Vikings defense is going to get sliced like some goddamn bread in this matchup, but I do think that we're going to see a heavy dosage of Davante Adams, and with the return of Mr. Aaron Jones, I don't think we see as much Robert Tonyan in this matchup, but still a solid game for him. At number 10, closing out the top 10, we have Jared Cook going up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. Another week, another game without Michael fucking Thomas, which is just so weird. Like, I feel like Michael Thomas just is going to get traded at the trade deadline at this point next Tuesday. Like, there's no other reason for him to not be playing unless, I don't know. I mean, he practiced once this week. I don't understand, so I really have no idea how to lean. I understand this as really, well, it does have something to do with the tight end position. It has something to do with Jared Cook. So, without Michael Thomas, Cook will be more used, more heavily targeted. So that makes Jared Cook a top 10 tight end, but I am scared of this matchup up against these Chicago Bears, but I still like him a decent amount this week. Considering every time he plays, just seems like this motherfucker ends up in the end zone. Now into tight ends 11 through 20, so if you guys have ended up enjoying thus far, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. At number 11, we have Mr. Richard Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers' old friend, going up against the Dallas Cowboys. I actually think Richard Rodgers is the guy who scored that touchdown up against the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Maybe I'm wrong, though. Maybe that was a different Richard Rodgers game, but Richard Rodgers made some crazy-ass catch with Aaron Rodgers, Rodgers to Rodgers, a bunch of years ago. That's what his fame is from. But now he's on the Philadelphia Eagles, likely without Dallas Goedert, likely going up against one of the softest matchups up against the tight end in the NFL in the Dallas Cowboys. So I like him this week. Is it risky? Yes, because Richard Rodgers wasn't all that involved last week, but he does have a very good matchup, and I'm willing to take the matchup in this case here up against the Dallas Cowboys. Number 12, we have Noah Fant going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Fant was also a guy kind of like Jonnu Smith, who we talked about earlier, who came into the week injured, didn't really get all that much work. Here, up against the Los Angeles Chargers, I expect a bounce-back game for Mr. Fant. Fant has been a very reliable tight end thus far this season for fantasy football, and I don't really expect anything less than a solid game here out of the Chargers. Not really top 5, top 10 potential, but I think he'll fall outside of the top 10, like around the 10 to 12 range, which is perfectly fine for me, especially with how topsy-turvy the tight end position is on a weekly basis. And number 13, we have Jimmy Graham, going up against the New Orleans Saints. Now, Jimmy Graham has just been such a big target for 9-inch Nick Foles as the weeks have went on. Without Allen Robinson this week, we could see a humongous big game out of Jimmy Graham this week up against the New Orleans Saints. I think this one is going to be low scoring though. It's bear weather in Chicago. It's going to be cold as absolute dicks, windy as fuck, but I still think that maybe that makes Nick Foles' overthrows just lean the correct way, and Jimmy Graham can snag that bitch. At number 14, we have Trey Burton going up against the Detroit Lions. Hey, boo-boo, want to take a look at my picnic basket up against the Detroit Lions? So Trey Burton, man, what a weird name to hear in 2020. Trey Burton was like the hottest breakout candidate of 2018 for fantasy football on the Bears. Now he's on the Colts, and he's looking pretty good with Phillip Rivers because Phillip Rivers loves that tight end. That's why the man has 70 goddamn kids. So I like Trey Burton this week up against the Detroit Lions in a pretty solid matchup here at tight end 14, but there's obviously competition around him, which does make me a bit wary. At number 15, we have Harrison Bryant going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Harrison Bryant was very involved last week after Odell Beckham Jr. went down last week. Odell Beckham Jr. Not too sure why I call him that. Some of my friends used to call him that, and it just pops into my brain. Odell Beckham Jr. tore his ACL. No need to make a bacon joke about this motherfucker after he tore his ACL. Very sad, obviously. Harrison Bryant was involved after that. Do I expect him to be super involved again? I don't know. But once you get back here, it's kind of just a complete and utter dice roll if these guys do anything. At number 16, we have Eazy-E, Evan Ingram going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Eazy-E has been so shit this season. Despicable, like the movie with the fucking minions in it, okay? He has not looked good at all. This motherfucker's dropping wide open balls. He is not getting open. He is not getting any separation. He's in the end zone, drops the ball. He's wide open, drops the ball. I don't know. I can't trust him up against the Bucs. Can't trust any of these guys really back here, 16 through 20. They're all really touchdown dependent. So if Evan Ingram ends up somehow finding the end zone, he'll be worthy of a start. But otherwise, this guy's just been a dumpster fire, burning a hole straight in your roster thus far this season. At number 17, we have Mike Licky Amagasicki going up against the Los Angeles Rams now. Mike Gesicki is the biggest unknown this week. He's the guy back here that I could see absolutely having a slam dunk like D-Wade to LeBron James in that dunk picture. That's the type of slam dunk I could see here from Mike Evans. But I could also see a game where, just like Odell Beckham Jr., he is taking a shit right on your goddamn chest. It's either one or the other, because Tua Tagovailoa is starting. Tua's either going to love to throw the ball to Mike Gesicki, or he is not going to throw to him at all. In my opinion, that's what's going to happen. So I don't know. Up against the Rams is a tough matchup for the receivers, so maybe Gesicki, Gesicki, gets a little loose in this one and plays well. But Gesicki's been so hit or miss thus far this season. He either balls the fuck out or plays like shit. So I don't think I trust him, but he is tight end 17 this week with a lot of upside. At number 18, we have Dalton Schultz going up against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philly. It's likely that Ben DiNucci, is the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. That doesn't sound very good. Doesn't. Dalton Schultz was all right with Andy Dalton, was really good with Dak. I don't know. It's just a shit show here at 18. I can expect him to be all right, but I don't really see big game potential for him. Here at number 19, we have Eric Ebron going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. Tough matchup for Eric Ebron going up against a tougher defense. I think Ebron is all right, but he's a touchdown-dependent tight end. And closing in the top 20, we have Drew Sample, the fake tight end of the NFL, going up against the Tennessee Titans, up against the Elite Titans. We could see a decent amount of points coming from the Cincinnati Bengals, but there's so many good receivers there, like AJ Green's lighting it up, T. Higgins is lighting up, Tyler Boyd is lighting it up, that I think Drew Sample is probably going to end up being the odd man out this week. Thank you guys all so much for watching this video. If you did at any point end up enjoying, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. I love each and every single one of you motherfuckers, and I can't wait to see you guys tomorrow in the live stream. Have a great rest of your guys' day. I love you all, as always. Good boy!